are all very characteristic of Islamic work. This motif of the circle of fish is generally found on the bottom of metal basins and is much rarer in ceramics. It's often seen paired with the sun, but here the sun has been replaced by the central relief of the fish.
This is a piece of armour, used to protect the torso, that probably dates from the first half of the 18th century. As you can see, it consists of 5 steel plates lined with silk. To judge from its precious appearance, it's more likely to have been an item of ceremonial armour than something designed for battle. Curator Gwenaëlle Félinger.
Alors ce type d'armure porte un nom, on les appelle des char.
This type of armour is known as char ayna in Persian, which means 4 mirrors. The name refers to the high polish on the steel, which would have shone extremely brightly when the armour was worn in the sunlight, making a very resplendent impression. One of the things that makes this armour interesting is its technique, fascinating for 2 reasons, one relating to the steel, and the other to the decoration covering the steel. It's what's known as Damascus steel, meaning that it was forged so that its various constituents formed a very tight pattern. The impression is barely visible to the naked eye, but if you look very closely, you can see that it gives the surface a slightly irregular appearance. The technique also produced extremely tough steel. This Damascus steel has then been decorated using a technique known as damascening, which consists of inlaying thin wires of gold into the steel to create a figurative design. The design is composed of floral scrolls with small birds and bunches of grapes, which cover the entire surface of the plates. Each plate also has a border of oblong shapes, known as a cartouche, containing inscriptions in Arabic and Persian. The majority of these inscriptions come from the Quran and may therefore have a protective significance.
These 2 boards with their ornate painted decoration are what's known as binding boards, and usually make up the cover of a book. They originally decorated a book that's now been lost, which may have contained poetry or perhaps an epic. We think that these 2 bindings were painted in around 1560 to 1580. Curator Gwenaëlle Félinger.
Le décor des 2 plats est assez complexe.
The decoration of the 2 boards is quite complex. To the left, there's a hunting scene showing people on horseback. The figure on the grey horse at the top is holding a falcon. Hunting falcons were quite common in the Iranian world. The others are hunting with lances or bows, scenes which you find quite commonly in miniatures, for example. And this hunting scene is arranged to include certain details that are very much recurring features of books from this period. This is true of the central scene, for example. A figure riding a red horse is hunting a lion, which is caught in the reeds and can't escape. We find an almost identical scene in many miniatures and on some other lacquered bindings. It probably refers to a specific episode taken from a work of poetry, but so far no one has managed the fairly complicated task of identifying it.
This large panel is made up of several ceramic tiles. As you can see from the shape of the upper edge, it would have been part of a large wall decoration. The image shows 3 men and a woman in a garden. Curator Gwenaëlle Félinger.
Le personnage central qui est habillé en
The central figure dressed in yellow is holding a reed pen in one hand and a book in the other. This is a specific type of book with a special layout designed exclusively for writing poetry. It's known as a safana in Persian. So we know that this figure is writing verse. Facing him is another figure, dressed in blue this time, who's also holding a book laid out in the same style. This second book has probably already been written in, so the figure must be reciting poetry. They're being watched by 2 other figures behind them. The young woman is bringing a bowl, probably containing something to eat.
This scene shows a poetry contest, which was a popular aristocratic pastime in the Safavid period. The greatest ruler of this dynasty, Shah Abbas, who reigned between 1589 and 1629, made Isfahan his capital. He devised the street plan of the city himself and had a palace complex built around a central avenue. The immense garden of this palace contained pavilions, and it's thought that this panel used to decorate one of the inside walls of the pavilion known as Chehel Sutun, which was built by a successor to Shah Abbas.
Gardens were very important for the Iranians, a fact that's made clear in this ceramic scene, because we have an illustration that shows us the palace garden. The scene also makes reference to a work of poetry known in Persian as the Bustan, which translates as the orchard. The orchard was written by a very well-known Iranian poet called Sadi and became very popular during the Safavid period.
This piece of glasswork, decorated with enamel and gold, is a lamp which would originally have been hung from chains. Scientific researcher Karine Jouvin.
Cette lampe repose sur un pied évasé.
The lamp rests on a flared foot with a ring-shaped base, topped by a body in the shape of a spinning top, which is equipped with rings that would have been used to hang the lamp. The walls of the neck, meanwhile, are straight, with a significant outward slant. Inside the lamp, there would have been a reservoir of oil for burning. You can also see blackish marks left by the smoke on the rim of the neck. Many examples of this type of lamp have survived. They were mass-produced to provide lighting for the numerous religious foundations established by the Mamluk sultans, mainly in their capital, Cairo.
The Mamluks were originally the close military guard of the sultans of the Ayyubid dynasty. They took power in Egypt and Syria from 1250 and ruled until 1517. Most of the lamps produced in this period are decorated only with inscriptions, separated into two bands or registers, as you can see in this example.
The first inscription on the body of the lamp, which is set against a blue background and scrolling plant motifs, states the name and title of the Sultan Al-Malik al-Nazir Muhammad, who ruled in the first half of the 14th century. The second band of inscription on the neck of the lamp contains an excerpt from one of the surahs of the Quran, found frequently on this type of lamp because, in a sense, it explains its function. The text in question is Surah 24, verse 35, which reads, "God is the light of the heavens and the earth. His light is as a niche in which is a lamp, and the lamp is in a glass. The glass is as though it were a glittering star."
The popular use of inscriptions and their rapid development as an art form are typical of objects produced in the Mamluk period, when figurative decoration was a rarity. It is also true that in a religious context, which certainly applies to this lamp, images of living beings were prohibited.
You must have been struck by the elaborate woodwork that forms the decoration of this door. Curator Sophie Macariou.
Padouk d'Asie et palissandre.
Asian paduk and Indian rosewood are both types of scented wood, which were chosen for their extreme hardness, their very fine grain, their warm colour, and the sweet perfume that they originally exuded. These two precious woods were used to supplement a geometric design that also included ivory, another eminently precious material. The door comes from a building erected in Cairo along the processional way that linked old Fatimid Cairo, an area that was reclaimed by the Mamluk dynasty from the mid-13th century, to the citadel, where the Mamluks had their power base. This processional way was chosen by the Emir al-Tunbuka al-Maridan as the site for a very large mosque complex.
So this mosque, which was built between 1337 and 1339, was the source of the two door leaves that you can see here. However, they didn't come from the same door, as they're slightly different sizes.
Along with the ivory, the rosewood and Asian paduk were used to create a complex geometric design based on a star-shaped polygon. Each of the wooden and ivory pieces is set in a solid frame and mounted inside a geometric panel in a delicate network of wooden beading. This very complex tongue and groove system achieved more than one purpose. Firstly, it meant that all of the offcuts of the wood could be used. This was important as wood was a precious material. Clearly, both Asian paduk and rosewood had to be imported into Egypt. Ivory was also a rare material, and so it was important to put all the offcuts to good use. But the technique also allowed these decorations to be used in the Egyptian climate, which is very harsh due to the extreme heat. So actually, it was the method used to assemble the decoration that allowed the doors to survive. These architectural remnants of the great construction works carried out by the Mamluk emirs and sultans are an example of the refinement that went into every part of their buildings. They also provide us with evidence of the extremely intense period of construction